Welcome, everyone, and thank you for joining us here on Cultivated's LinkedIn and YouTube channels, High Spirits channels as well. So thank you all for being here. I'm Jay Rosenthal, and today we're launching This Week in Cannabis Live, a program that brings together some of the smartest, most insightful, and frankly, most fun voices in the cannabis media landscape. We're aiming to keep this program tight, concise, and insightful. We'll have a rotating cast of folks upon which we'll call for their expertise and insight, and today's lineup is A++. And just to explain that I'm wearing a ridiculous outfit, the Jays are in Game 1 of the World Series, and this is obviously a Jays hat. And this jersey is yes, it's a hockey jersey, but in Canada, everything is sort of hockey adjacent. And so it is a Blue Jays hockey jersey with Vlad Guerrero Jr. on the back. So it's all of the moment here in Toronto. So thank you all for joining us here today. From the High Spirit podcast, which is a cannabis business podcast, we have co-hosts Anna Ray Grabstein and Ben Larson. Anna Ray and Ben, thanks for being here.
Yeah,
Hello.
Thanks for having us.
By the way,
Excited to kick it off.
This just made me think that like we're hosting an ESPN show, which is now like this is the pinnacle of my existence. And also joined by Jeremy Burke, my co-founder here at Cultivated, and our editor-in-chief. Jeremy, thanks for being here.
Great to be here as always, Jay. Thank you.
I'm also feeling left out that I'm the only person here that doesn't have AirPods. So maybe by next week, I'll make the big investment. Thanks everybody for joining us. Today was not today, but this week, something really fun happened, and we'll kick it off with this. There is a mayor's race in New York City. It's very hard to escape it. Even I assume Ben and Anna Ray in California, you are hearing about it. I'm certainly hearing about it here in Toronto. And there was a debate about some serious things and then some not serious things, at least in terms of the debate. Can I play you all a clip and then have you chime in?
Let's do it.
Because I kind of love this so much. Here we go.
Have you ever purchased anything in a cannabis shop? And if so, what did you buy, Mr. Mamdani?
I have. I have purchased marijuana at a legal cannabis shop.
Okay. Mr. Cuomo?
No.
Mr. Sliwa?
When I was shot 5 times, I've had Crohn's disease. I did use medical marijuana. Yes.
Okay.
Okay.
Wow, so serious.
Okay, I guess. Anna Ray, what do you think? I'm like, is this a surprise that this was asked about? And like,
Well, first of all, I just loved it. Mom Donnie's shit-eating grin with that smile. It was classic, prolific. Like, thank you so much for that smile. It made my week. I went back and watched it a couple times. Totally a bummer, honestly, to hear from Cuomo that he has not been into a store. Legal cannabis has been such a hot topic in New York State, and it was unfolding while he was governor. He should have gone to a store by now. So that's a huge disappointment. But I'm just all for Mom Dami right now when it comes to that. Yes. Like, yes, yes, yes. More shit-eating grins, more mayors that are going to cannabis shops, please.
Yes, Jeremy, you live in New York City. Like, did this pique anybody's interest, or was it something that we are super interested in?
I think a little column A, column B. I personally am very interested in it. But look, I think in New York, there's 2 things, right? One is that cannabis is pretty normalized in New York. We are multiple years into legalization. I think, it is not a topic that has come up in the mayor's race so much, except for that specific soundbite, which was good and interesting. But, I think the sort of more important takeaway is that despite, Zoran's grin and his sort of shit-eating grin on that, I think he really could be an advocate for the industry. In City Hall, he did run on deregulating small businesses, halal carts, and legal operators in the city share some of those frustrations with red tape. And so I think looking at the issue holistically, it dovetails with his left-leaning focus on social equity as well as promoting small businesses. And so, look, I think he could be a really good mayor for the industry if it's something he wants to take on. I think Cuomo probably hasn't spent more than 35 seconds thinking about it and probably won't as mayor. And so be that as it may. I think Curtis Sliwa gave, one of the most bizarre answers to the question possible. He sort of took a page out of 50 Cent's playbook to talk about his, rough and tumble upbringing on the subway. So it was really sort of a microcosm of the entire mayor's race when you hear those answers in some ways.
I also like that Mamdani kind of started to look high during the actual answer. Like, I don't know how he did that. He sort of morphed. Ben, did you notice that? Like he definitely smiled and then giggled, but he also
Maybe
didn't.
he bought the cannabis on his way in and had a gummy to relax because of the stress of the debate.
It's like that meme when the gummy finally kicks in. Like that's the moment that he got asked that question.
That's true. Yeah, he teleported back to that time when he was smoking the marijuana. But I mean,
It sort of brought him right back.
How old is Cuomo? Like, get out of here, man.
Why do you answer the question like my dad?
Yeah, I think Cuomo must be 67 or 68, and so it's a different era for him for sure.
Did you just say 6'7"?
Jeremy just dropped the 6'7" in there.
You caught that. Yeah,
It's pretty good. Pretty good. Ben,
So
I just want to ask you. I want to ask you on this question because it bumped on me that they asked what he bought, and I think his answer I mean, Anna Ray, you loved his answer as it was. Jeremy, you gave the context in the mayor's race, but wouldn't it be a real home run if he actually told folks what he bought, and it was like, some sort of like he bought, shatter. Like, wouldn't it have been interesting if he actually bought something that was like, like a real cannabis product?
Yeah, bought a dab rig and some shatter, some live rosin maybe.
He really would have made fans in the industry for sure, right?
Totally. I mean, he should have just leaned in, but you can tell he was kind of caught off guard by the question. He was just kind of giggling to himself.
It's like he got caught by his parents, is how it sort of came across. He just started giggling about it, right? At least like clearly came home high from a party and got asked about it. Ben, I want to stick with you because also in New York this week, we ran a story from our partners at Lit Alerts that talked about price compression in New York City. So when Mamdani did buy weed at a cannabis store in Manhattan, it was probably not necessarily in Manhattan, but he probably paid less than he did a year ago, potentially. At the same time, we saw that story that we ran, a story in Minnesota ran where their market just opened up, where obviously or not obviously, or maybe obviously, we'll see. Like they have no product on their shelves. There was a quote from a dispensary owner that says he's getting calls like 3 or 4 times a day. When are you going to have product? Like it might be surprising to the Minnesota market or the New York market that each one of those things are happening. But someone who's been in the industry for a long time, like, should we be surprised that any of these things are happening in new or like a market that's 3 years old? Like, doesn't this playbook happen every single time?
I am flabbergasted. No, I mean, come on. Anna Ray and I were just talking about this after the MJ Unpacked conference in Atlantic City. New Jersey's on their high, and it's just like, all right, guys, start doing your planning because this is all going to get compressed. And we do wonder how many of these operators are actually baking this into their projections because, like you said, we know it's going to happen. In California, it took actually a number of years. In the Michigan market, I think we saw it happen in like 18 months. And so from a New York standard, it was a slow rollout, so they get a little bit of a pass. But yeah, it's about time that this starts happening.
Yeah. And Jeremy, you and I were talking. Go ahead, Anna Ray.
Oh yeah, Minnesota gave out its licenses for cultivation through a lottery. Most of them in the summer, I think it was either May or June. And to build cultivation takes many, many months, if not a year. Then you have to actually grow the plants. And so they did do a rolling license situation where they gave cultivation first and then retail later, but they still did not give enough time for the supply chain to actually come to fruition before the retailers had a chance to open. So this was completely inevitable. Like we could have written this book in June when they gave out those licenses to cultivators that there would be no product in October.
Well,
why is Minnesota doing this? Like they just keep dropping rules without any anticipation of timeline. They did this just now to the hemp category as well, which actually came before the regulated market, if anyone doesn't know. And they say you need to have a license, but they're not rolling out licenses, and then all of a sudden it's like you're just wiping a bunch of products off the shelves. Like I just don't get it.
Well, and in New York, Jeremy, you're going to correct me when I fuck this up, but almost the reverse happened. They handed out cultivation licenses on the promise that they would be retail to sell to, and then there was nowhere to sell it. So like they screwed it up in the reverse in New York, where I forget the quote, but it was brilliant that Joe Rossi said, like, he said the people who had been growing, given license to grow and turn their farms from hemp to cannabis over time, I think maybe he said royally fucked, but it was it was definitely something like that, but like the reverse happened.
Yeah, no, you're exactly right. And I think, 2 points here. NRA spoke about it very well. Cannabis is a plant. You need enough time to build out the capacity to grow it and actually get it in stores. And I think a lot of states, when they roll out the regulations, they obviously know that, but they forget the time frame and how it works, right? It does take months. And at the same time, without turning it into other products, like the plant quality does degrade over time. And that's what happened in New York, right? They had nowhere to sell it. Potency goes down, plants rot. It is a natural product. And so it was a big mistake. I think the sort of second larger point is that every state still in 2025 tries to reinvent the wheel to some respect. And I think, there is a good argument for this being living, breathing policy and to change things and tweak things. At the same time, we are over a decade into legalization. There are things that have worked and there are things that at this point should not be changed. And so, obviously appreciate Minnesota as a big populous state trying to get the industry up and running. This is a very hard thing to do. But there are simple things that they could have learned along the way that is a little bit disappointing to see, from an outside perspective. And if you're an operator and if you're holding this license, I'm sure it makes your day-to-day very, very difficult.
Yeah. Well, it's not to say you still have, not to say there's always going to be things to do, but Canada just celebrated this week or last week our 7th anniversary of cannabis legalization. Amazing milestone. Great. I love it. Yay. And, pick it up on your way to or from tonight's game. And still this week, one of our partners at High Tide and some of the industry leaders are calling on government still to crack down on unregulated cannabis and unlicensed dispensaries in the city. So 7 years in, some of the same things that New York is going through, that Minnesota will go through, that California is certainly going through, still being addressed here in Canada. So, well, hooray for 7 years. Some of the same challenges exist in all the markets over time, sometime in a compressed timeline, like Ben was talking about in Michigan. New York is dealing with oversupply, potentially Minnesota undersupply. And which brings me to things that also don't change sometimes, and that is DC. And DC is certainly where the regulatory landscape, all of our eyes are always sort of, one eye is on what's happening locally and one is what's happening in DC. And the reauthorization of the Farm Bill is supposed to happen this Congress this year. There's a hemp ban or not included in it. Any updates, Jeremy, Anna Ray, Ben, of what's happening in DC? Because it seems like maybe the two senators from Kentucky are fighting about what should happen in this bill, and they both have a lot of power, or I guess don't like fighting in public. What's going on?
Yeah, I'm happy to jump in on this one.
Sure.
I've been monitoring it pretty closely. So technically nothing's happening, right? Because we're in a government shutdown.
Right.
So
Well,
anyone that's
nothing's happening unless you want to actually tear down historic buildings in DC.
yeah.
Right.
Who needed the East Wing? It's like the East Coast, right? Anyways.
Oh,
I could get some hate mail for that one. All right. Anyways, so government shutdown, people are jockeying. We're still in the same situation. A lot of people are prognosticating on which way it's going, this way or that. Yes, the language is in there. It's in appropriations. It's in the Farm Bill to basically reverse the loophole, right? The one that McConnell ushered in. And so McConnell is now trying to, right his wrong, so to speak. But he's receiving a lot of pressure, not only from Rand Paul, but from the farmers in Kentucky. There have been like 58 farmers in Kentucky that, I don't know, I think they're quoting like a $28 billion marketplace. I don't think that's all coming from Kentucky. But they're sending letters to McConnell. There's cornbread hemp that struck a deal with the University of Louisville. So it'll be really interesting to see how this all plays out. Obviously, it's like Hunger Games at the White House or on Capitol Hill. You have every constituency possible. You have prohibitionists, you have the MSOs, deep regulated cannabis, and then full spectrum all the way over to hemp. And so who knows where it lands, but I imagine that it's going to be somewhere in the middle, probably.
I like the idea of shooting a Hunger Games in the like tunnels under the Capitol. That would be not the worst movie ever, actually. And if you could make this the theme, it would be actually pretty good. Jeremy, what are you hearing? Anything from your friends in DC?
Yeah, no, I mean there is a government shutdown, so not much, and I think not much has changed at the moment. But yes, you're absolutely right in saying that the two senators from Kentucky, from what I'm hearing, are vastly opposed on the issue. And I will say again, zooming out a little bit, squeezing toothpaste back into a tube is always harder than pushing it out. I'm sorry to use a terrible metaphor, but I think that is probably informing, how a lot of Republicans are thinking about this issue, because there are jobs on the line, and there are other regulations that I think we've seen be effective that promote public health and public safety when it comes to regulating intoxicating hemp that don't involve outright bans. And so, if I had to sort of handicap something or predict something, I would think it moves in that direction. At the same time, I think, Ben made the point well. There are a lot of outright prohibitionists in the Republican Party. I think, McConnell and his ilk included. And, Mitch McConnell might be 80 years old, I think older, and he might be a little bit slower and weaker than he is, but he still knows how to push the levers of power, and he still knows how to negotiate. And so I think, look, it is certainly possible that the next Farm Bill, Agriculture Appropriations Bill, is significantly changed from the 2018 one that has allowed these products to flourish.
Anna Ray.
Yeah. Well, the levers of power is an interesting concept because someone said to me recently that during this government shutdown, there's plenty happening. It's just that the government isn't open. And this is where lobbyists really actually make their due. And so I think that there is a lot happening behind the scenes, especially because the elected representatives aren't sitting in their chairs voting on bills in the same way. And so people are busy having conversations behind the scenes about all of this. Marijuana Moment this week published a rundown of all the different groups and stakeholders that are lobbying for marijuana related items in DC. And you saw on that list a lot more Bev Alc companies than you ever have before. There have been Bev Alc companies on that list in the past, but the list is growing. And I think that when it comes to the Farm Bill, I think that these alcohol companies are just really interested in being able to participate in the THC beverage market going forward. And I think it's going to be a lot harder to roll back what the Farm Bill created than Mitch McConnell realizes.
Yeah.
Just to capitalize that on a little bit, we just got done with a few conferences that were really notable. So the National Beer Wholesalers had their conference in Las Vegas, and then the National Association of Convenience Stores had their conference in Chicago. And at both of those conferences, THC beverages were at the tip of everyone's tongue. They were part of the keynotes. They were on stage. And these are the biggest lobbying groups in the nation. And so we talk about hemp versus cannabis, but these groups are identifying the THC beverage category as the most exciting beverage category that they've ever seen. And so if you think they're going to give that up, you have something else coming. And so the big question is, what else besides beverage gets protected in all of this jockeying, right? I think that's the biggest conversation that's happening right now, at least on the hemp side of the conversation. Meanwhile, prohibitionists and strict regulated cannabis folk are fighting to ban it all. But I think it's a misweighted, competition.
Ben, you were at both of these shows?
I was at the Vegas show. My team was at the Chicago show.
Which show is more fun, convenience store show or beer store? Beer show.
I would say the beer wholesalers probably have the most fun.
Yeah, it's a big business, but obviously, beer wholesale. Just wondering if we should make plans for next year if we're going to Vegas again or going to Chicago. Super insightful all around. Thank you, and certainly not to say time will tell, because it's not just time, it's effort as well, because these things are happening in DC as we speak. To wrap it up, one of the best parts of our collective jobs, or at least parts of our jobs, is interviewing really amazing founders to hear their stories. But rarely does a story involve a startup, an acquisition, and then a buyback. And Anna Ray and Ben, you had the team from Levy on this week. Jeremy, you spoke with the team from Levy as well. And I wanted to play a clip from your interview at High Spirits with Eric and Kristen Rogers, because it was a great conversation. I listened to yours. I obviously listened to Jeremy's as well. Can I play a bit and then we'll sing it all out?
Yeah, let's go.
Sure.
Here's you. Sorry if you don't like to see yourself. Although now that I show this, you can actually see what else I watch on YouTube. I realize, like Hot Wings, Kara and Scott and
South Park.
right and Jerry Garcia. But aside from that, I will play this.
People want to hear about the buyback, but I also think that founders really want to hear about the acquisition process, how long it takes, and then what happens post. So I do think it makes sense to take a little more time. I want to hear about how long that deal took from when it started to when it closed, and then what happened to you guys after. Did you stay on? Did you exit? Stage left? What did that look like?
So we signed an LOI with AIR in August 2021. But we did not get through regulatory approval until February 2022. That's how long the regulatory process took to actually sell. So we were sort of like in this middle of nowhere for 6-7 months while the state sort of went through everything and decided what to do. And I made the decision to stay with the brand as a therapist and as someone who was just really focused on what else can I do to help the stigma? I cannot believe how far we've come. It's been really fun to be part of that. Working with AIR to figure out, okay, how can I help in that way? How can I travel around and help you in other states and really focus on what my dream had been all along, and that is to really help people understand that you don't have to just eat a brownie and be high for the next 24 hours. You can actually have a good experience that's consistent, that we all know how we feel after one glass of wine, right? Like, we want people to feel that way about cannabis as well, so that we don't keep hearing these stories about people having these terrible experiences.
I love it. I found them very compelling. I don't think I'd met them before, but I found their stories very compelling. What were your takeaways, Anna Ray and Ben?
I think that entrepreneurs have this never give up attitude, and I recognized that in them, and that they had this dream when they started the company. They sold the company, the dream was evolving through that. But then sometimes when you're living the dream you realize isn't actually the dream, and they had an opportunity to bring it back home and to take the dream to the next stage. So I thought it was a cool full circle moment. I don't know a lot of stories of entrepreneurs buying their company back, but I recognized some real like vision and long-term commitment to what they started originally. So I liked it a lot.
Yeah, and in parallel to the founder story, I just love the kind of parallel timeline and narrative that's going on in this time frame. So like, the emergence of hemp beverages right as AIR made this acquisition, like talk about kind of getting hosed on a deal and trying to like make that happen. And then also like just the impact of the regulatory environment and timelines, because going out, structuring all these partnerships, because Levia in Massachusetts, they had this whole vertically integrated system. They really own the supply chain. But when you go to these other markets, you can't spin up a whole new supply chain and own it all vertically. And so unraveling all those partnerships and all those deals to get the acquisition or the buyback done was really interesting to hear. And in that time, because AIR was going through its own stuff, to hear about the different leadership changes that they had to navigate during that time, and how every time it happened, it was like reset the conversation. Like, talk about, yeah, to Anna Ray's point, the resilience it takes to get through all that and come out with a positive story on the tail end. It's very rare, especially in this industry.
Jared, you talked to them as well, and I think there's a lot of learnings about their experience, and it does track well with a lot of people's experience in the cannabis industry. One point I wanted to talk to you about, and they didn't talk about this negatively, but it did come up several times, that the deal with AIR came because they actually had, Eric and Kristen, had investors that wanted their money, right? They wanted to show a return to their investors. And I'm not saying that made them say yes to AIR or that they couldn't say no, but like that is something that I think a lot of entrepreneurs deal with, is that they have investors that want their money back. And, I don't know if it was the first time they wanted to be acquired or maybe the 100th company that came to them. But talk a little bit about that, because that is certainly part of the story too. Not that we like dove super far into, but it did come up in the conversation.
Yeah, no, Jay, I thought that was super interesting, and both a cautionary tale, whether it's inside cannabis or outside cannabis, of if you have a dream, be very careful about taking on outside money, right? Obviously, a beverage company has distribution costs, and there's a lot of things that go into actually creating a beverage. It's hard to sort of bootstrap or self-fund that. But at the same time, things do cost money, and investors want return on their investment. And so oftentimes that pulls founders into position where they may have to exit earlier than they want to in order to pay their investors back, or they may have to do things, make choices that their investors want that maybe the founders don't, or that don't align with their specific vision. And so I think, broadly speaking, it's a cannabis story. We've seen that a lot just outside of Levia in the industry itself, but it's an entrepreneurial story as well. And I think that is something, I'm taking certainly very personally in my own career, and as well, I think other people should as well. At the same time, there's nothing, I'm not trying to say there's anything nefarious about investors wanting their money back. It just means that incentives can get misaligned pretty quickly. And I think they were only about 18 months or so into Levia before they exited. And that's well, congratulations. That's very, very quick to exit. And that's awesome. At the same time, I got the sense from talking to them that they might have wanted to keep running it themselves and stay independent for longer than that. And there's outside factors that push them into a deal. And so it's interesting hearing about that. And I actually really appreciate their frankness in speaking about it as well.
Yeah, it's a very interesting, compelling story. That's why we wanted to feature it. I'm sure Anna Ray and Ben, that's why you wanted to feature it. And it's that's why everybody who's in the cannabis industry or the hemp derived beverage industry, it's a good one. And I would say, Jeremy, and your like former MBA classes at Columbia, probably a good listen as well for folks who want to start their own business. Ben and Anna Ray and Jeremy, I want to thank you for joining us here today this is episode 1 of This Week in Cannabis Live. We're going to do this every Friday. You have something to say, Anna Ray? Sorry.
No, that's the number one.
There you go. Like, hold on, one more thing. I want to thank you both for being here with us. Jeremy, thank you as well as always. We're going to be back here next Friday, maybe with the same cast of characters. Maybe we'll add some other folks in as well for This Week in Cannabis Live. How to find everybody on this program, you'll find in the show notes. Thank you to our partners at High Spirits, obviously, and Cannabis Musings, who will be with us next week. Links, again, how to find them and their shows will be in the show notes. So Anna Ray, Ben, Jeremy, thanks so much. And we'll connect with everybody next week. And
thanks, Jay.
One more thing, and this is like the most Blue Jays thing you can say. Just say, okay, Blue Jays, let's play ball. It's like this own proprietary baseball song. You sing this like during the 7th inning stretch. It makes no sense, but it has caught on over the past, 50 years. So there you go.
Play
Good
ball.
luck, everybody. Have a good weekend.
Bye.
Go Jays.